New project time. I'm still really interested by this textural sequins technique that I've been developing, and so I need to look back at some of the recent pieces that I've done to try and work out what is successful about them and what I need to change and develop in this new piece. This landscape is probably still my favourite, even though it's the first, which in some ways is a little bit frustrating because it means that I hit on something that I feel is good and interesting and then I veered away from it further. But I feel like the colours work really well, and the simple composition and directional application of the sequins are definitely factors in what makes this work well visually overall. I'm not as keen on the circular hoop presentation because I feel that it does make it look a little bit more craftsy, and I kind of want to elevate it a bit more than that. This then led me on to doing the velvet fronds piece, which was much more about stripping back the colours and just looking at the technique itself. So again, the directions here are very clear, but this time they're varied, which I think works when there's a lot of negative space. And using the different sizes of sequin to create different layers within those directional areas also adds to the interest, but again only really works when there is negative space and probably, a restricted colour palette. What I felt that this one was missing was that I do like working with colour. I really enjoy the colour range that's available in these sequins, and so the more that I get to play with those colours, for me, the better. Next up was the tree canvas piece. Working directly onto this canvas was one of the main things that I wanted to test with this piece. And overall, the colours are good, and it's nice to see that direct onto canvas application is possible. This one is probably my least favourite of the pieces. I feel like I lost my way a little bit with realising that I could go in any direction from the velvet fronds piece. But this piece doesn't have any negative space, so you don't really get that clarity of the different sections for places for your eye to settle. This one is much more impressionist, I think, in the overall effect, and it's probably a little bit too far for me. There needs to be some kind of order in order for it to really communicate what I'm trying to show, and I think this one loses it a little bit and therefore ends up kind of almost looking a little bit primary. This is the point at which I realised that on this piece I am making exactly the same mistake as I did before with the tree canvas, and so I need to take out the sequins that I've put down at a vertical angle on the piece. This can always be a bit painful, undoing work that you feel you've already done, but when it's the thing that's bothering you about the piece and you finally identify that, it's absolutely worth taking it out to be that bit happier with the final piece when it is eventually done. The tricky bit here is trying to remember the order in which you put the sequins down so that you can pull them out cleanly, which is easier said than done when you realise that your brain was clearly working in a much more randomised way when you applied them than it is now. As a direct result of being quite annoyed about this, I decided to give the trees a little bit of a break and go back onto working into the sky so that I didn't have to think about my mistake. Not that I was bitter about it at all, but I clearly was. And it's important to keep moving forwards, so even when things are a little bit trickier with a piece, I think it's an important lesson to take away from this, that there's always another way round to working on things, and there's probably another area that you can work on that doesn't get your hackles up. So in the interest of progress, you should try and switch tacks instead of stopping altogether. So then moving on to this piece, I have tried to take all of that into consideration and did accidentally produce a painting in the meantime. But it's fine, I think that's a good step to getting familiar with the artwork and the general composition. This one does have a slightly more complicated composition than my first piece. There is definitely a little bit more going on, there's different colour sections. However, it is a bigger piece, so I feel there's a little bit more space to explore that. And I'm going to try and keep the directions a little bit simpler, just working in the way that is most logical for each section at this point, and seeing what happens from there. My plan is for this to go onto a canvas, hence the painting of the first canvas, which was going to be the way that I dealt with the colour blocking issue of the white coming through from the last canvas piece. However, having done that, I thought that I should approach this more as a professional embroiderer and do it really in the right way. So I found myself some olive base fabric and set up the frame with that on it, transferring the design in the old-fashioned prick and pounce method. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And now I'm ready to start stitching with my sequins and just seeing where this one leads me. If you too are creating a new piece of artwork, really bringing something from scratch out of your mind that doesn't already exist, don't be afraid to go back and really analyse your most recent works with similar qualities for what you like and dislike about them. I always find that writing these things down and really seeing them on paper in an analytical way helps me to make the right sort of visual decisions moving forwards. So often with the creative arts, these decisions are made on a feeling, and as much as that is really important to follow those feelings, sometimes digging into them that tiny bit further can reveal a whole load of information that you didn't necessarily even know was there in your own brain. That's all the thoughts that I have for you for today, so I'm going to leave you with this little bit of stitching that I'm just finishing off, and join me in the next video where I carry on with this project. Bye for now!